Hello and welcome to this talk on how to research aspects of Offaly's history and to identify suitable sources located throughout Ireland and elsewhere. Whether you are interested in the history of a town, village or townland, the story of a family, or some incident in Offaly's history, in this short presentation I'm going to show you how to identify the suitable location for sources for Offaly history. Sources for Offaly history are located from Ballycumber to Belfast and from Edenderry to Edinburgh and beyond. A presentation of this type as recently as 2013 was something very different, owing to the fact that in the last decade we have witnessed the development of Offaly Archives, a joint initiative between Offaly History and Offaly County Libraries. Whereas in the past the researcher may have begun their research journey at the National Archives of Ireland or the National Library of Ireland, now their first step will always be Offaly Archives. Firstly, let me point out a few important tips for people when researching Offaly history or when using online catalogues. Firstly, a reminder that from the 1550s until 1920, Offaly was known as King's County. Most online databases and catalogues will have both names, but some do not. Look out also for those that confuse King's and Queen's County, with Offaly material often appearing in leash entries and vice versa. Remember also the name changes for many of our towns and villages. For example, Frankfurt is now Kilcormac, Phillipstown is now Dangan, Parsonstown is now Bar, and so on. Likewise with townlands, spellings change over time, and so where you live now or where you're interested in researching may be a very different spelling in the past. A simple way to ascertain this is to go to the website loganum.ie and search here as shown on the screen now. Remember also that records can turn up in the strangest of places, and the movement of people is often important to understand. For example, the papers of a South Offaly gentry family from the 19th century today are located in Kenya. Consider also family and marriage alliances. Sources can be inherited or moved with people over time. A good example of this in Offaly would be the papers of the Ponsonby family who owned the village of Dangan, and which now lie buried in the Staples collection in the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland in Belfast. In short, be willing to search across multiple catalogues and with variations, considering that place names and family names may have been spelled differently or even phonetically spelled in the past. One of the most useful catalogues for searching for sources is the National Library's Sources database, which contains over 180,000 catalogue records for Irish manuscripts and articles in periodicals. Located at www.sources.nli.ie, a simple search for Offaly reveals over 1,000 entries, of which 780 are manuscripts. These manuscripts include 176 documents or collections relating to landed estates, 76 maps and surveys, and 31 estate rentals. Notable documents include the rental of Ahamilek and Clonbrock in 1825 with tenants named, the rental of the Bell Estate at Banagher, 1849 to 1874, a famine time rental of Clonsast, Rolleston estate maps from Clonlis Barony, 1665 to 1889, maps of Bracknell estate of Lord Ashtown. Estates such as the Kings of Ballylin at Ferban are well documented, and the National Library's holdings include account books, receipts, deeds, rentals, and other papers relating to their property in West Offaly. It is also worth noting that the National Library holds a record of papers which were once in private possession, and though this list is now somewhat outdated, it is always worth checking. The National Archive of Ireland is the one archive where a visit is almost certainly necessary in order to fully utilise and understand the breadth of their holdings. A search, for example, of Offaly sources on the National Archives website will reveal interesting sources, but it is certainly not all of what they will actually contain. The National Archives of Ireland holds a significant number of other papers, for example, the Rebellion Papers, outlining the effects of the 1798 rebellion on the county, the State of the Country Papers, detailing the rise of crime and social anarchy which prevailed in the 1820s and 1830s, the Distress Papers, highlighting the impact of the Great Famine of the 1840s, likewise the Outrage Papers, which detail crime in Offaly in the early 1840s and 1850s. The Chief Secretary's papers detail later periods, including the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, bringing us to the period of the Irish Land War. Also in the National Archive are a significant number of estate papers, maps and documents, and business records, including the aforementioned Perry Mills or Belmont Mills. For a variety of reasons, including religious and political, a significant number of sources for County Offaly are to be found in the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, which is located in Belfast. In the main, these papers include landed estate collections and include the Downshire papers from Edenderry, the Charleville papers from Tullamore, the Staples papers, which relate to the aforementioned Ponsonby family of Dangan, the Atkinson's family papers from Cancourt at Shinrone, the Macaulay papers from Frankfurt, which is now Kilcormac, and my personal favourite, the Register of Trees for Kings County, dating from 1793. Naturally, and given the history of the country, a search of the British National Archives at Kew is worthwhile. A search here on their website will reveal over 3,150 records relating to County Offaly, 3,000 of which are located at Kew, while others are dotted throughout Britain and Ireland. Examples of these include the records of J.R. Tyler, a businessman in Burr, where the papers are located in Leicester. The Digby Estate papers are located at Dorset and Birmingham. The Ponsonby of Clahan papers are located in Sheffield Archives. The Armstrong papers of Ballycumber and Clara are located at Cornwall Record Office. And the Derby of Leap Castle papers are located at East Sussex Record Office. As one of the oldest institutions in the country, the collections of Trinity College Dublin are also worth exploring. And from the depositions which followed the 1641 Rising to personal and family papers, Offaly is well represented in the collections of Trinity College. Material of interest here includes the account books of John Cantwell, who held a warehouse in Burr from 1810 to 1818, the papers and photographs of the Longworth Damus family of Rode, the collection relating to the Armstrong family of Clara and Ballycumber, and the Register of Leases 1748 to 1762 of the first Earl of Charleville at Tullamore. It is important to remember that estate papers in particular and other collections can be found across multiple libraries, archives and repositories. Perhaps the best example of this for Offaly are the Charleville papers, which are located at the following institutions: Trinity College, Dublin, the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, the University of Nottingham, Westmeath County Library and Offaly County Archives. Another notable Offaly collection, which is deposited in several locations, are the papers of the Belmont Mills, owned by the Perry family. These papers, which await further exploration by researchers, are located in the National Archives of Ireland, Maynooth University, and in Offaly Archives. It is important to remember also that material relating to Offaly's history may be kept in private hands. There is a wealth of material relating to Offaly history dotted throughout the county, and for researchers this is always something which is worth investigating. Remember though that you should always go beyond the county boundary. For example, I myself have made great success in adjoining counties where papers relating to County Offaly have been housed. It can be somewhat difficult to keep up to speed with the proliferation of online sources which have become available, some of these by subscription. These include the Irish Newspaper Archive, which includes over 60 regional papers, including the Offaly Independent and the Midland Topic, which will be of interest to Offaly researchers. We should note that in terms of newspapers, however, particularly in the past, that material relating to County Offaly often appears in other regional newspapers, most particularly the newspapers of surrounding counties. So for the researcher, one should also keep an eye out in the papers from County Laois, County Westmeath, County Kildare and County Meath. The British Newspaper Archive contains over several million pages of reports of daily newspapers, including the King's County Chronicle. Find My Past also has a significant collection of newspapers, but also the Petty Session records, which will be useful for detailing instances of crime and misdemeanours of a local nature. Ancestry.com has a large array of online sources available, including a source which details the arrival of numerous people from County Offaly during the revolutionary period of the early 20th century. Online also are Griffith's Valuation, the Tide of Plotmans, and on the National Library of Ireland's website, the Catholic Parish Registers, all of which are useful to the researcher. For a variety of reasons, local newspapers will not, or indeed did not, cover events in Offaly. At various times, such as during the Great Famine, this was done so not to embarrass a landlord or a family connected to an event or an area. Likewise, for areas along the periphery of the county, they have at various times turned to newspapers outside the county. For example, in Edenderry, the main newspaper for many years in the 20th century was the Kildare-published Leinster Leader. In short, it is always worth looking at newspapers which surround Offaly, so look to Westmeath, Laois, Kildare and Tipperary and so on. The process is, however, made much easier today because of digitisation. For a variety of reasons, local newspapers will not, or indeed did not, cover events in Offaly. At various times, such as during the Great Famine, this was done so not to embarrass a landlord or a family connected to an event or an area. Likewise, for areas along the periphery of the county, they have at various times turned to newspapers outside the county. For example, in Edenderry, the main newspaper for many years in the 20th century was the Kildare-published Leinster Leader. In short, it is always worth looking at newspapers which surround Offaly, so look to Westmeath, Laois, Kildare and Tipperary and so on. The process is, however, made much easier today because of digitisation. It is also useful at this point to highlight that Offaly newspapers are available through Offaly library branches, and digitised copies can be searched using computers in the various branch libraries. It is also important to highlight that many of these branch libraries throughout Offaly have a detailed local history section and should be somewhere where the researcher visits. Researchers might also be interested in the Irish Architectural Archive in Dublin, which holds a vast array of sources on country houses and in particular those relating to County Offaly. Likewise, the researcher will be interested to note that there are almost 900 items relating to County Offaly located in the Royal Irish Academy. While also hosted by the Royal Irish Academy's website is the fantastic Irish History Online, a source for secondary source material relating to the history of County Offaly. Remember also to have a look at what is held in archives and repositories outside of Offaly. Very often material is to be found in what might appear to be the strangest of places. For example, take a look at UCC Archives, which reveals the Rhine of Inch papers, which includes information about the Bennets of Thomastown near Drumcullen. Likewise, the Healy-Hutchison papers in Fingal County Library have a significant amount of information on 18th century Offaly, including leases and deeds. The Irish Jesuit Archives has material on Tullabeg College at Rahan, while the Royal Irish Academy has the Lowtown Trust papers, which relate to Cloneygown. The Irish Architectural Archive in Merrion Square in Dublin also has a significant amount of information about Offaly country houses. Researching Offaly natives who were scattered throughout the world has also become much easier with access to online catalogues and digitised collections around the world. These include, but are not limited to, for example, Australian newspaper collection at Trove, or the Chronicling America, the digitised newspapers collection from the USA, which covers a vast period from 1773 to 1963. Likewise, the Brooklyn Eagle newspaper provides a useful source for many things relating to County Offaly immigrants who settled in that part of the US. While the contents of family history sources such as Contained at Ancestry and Find My Past, to name but two, would require a presentation of its own right, it is useful to note them here. Although subscription-based, these are proving more popular with those researching local and community histories. Also worth examining is the Archives of the European Archives portal, which aims to bring together links from various collections on the continent. A simple search for Offaly reveals over 7,000 results, but many of these are modern sources, and the records also overlap with several of the aforementioned institutions, but nonetheless it is worth examining and taking a look at. The returns for this reveal Seabaum to his sister Julia in Clara in 1856, which is located in the University of York, and the estate maps relating to several parts of County Offaly, which are located in Cambridge University Library. Ironically, this archives portal may be the best way to view material which is located in the National Archives of Ireland. And it might surprise people to learn of records relating to places in Offaly which are Researching Offaly history, however, should begin with a visit to the new Offaly Archives building in Tullamore, which can be done by making an appointment with the archivist. This unique partnership between Offaly History and Offaly County Library brings the collections of both entities together under one roof, which for the researcher is a very welcome. The types of archives now housed in Offaly Archives fall under two main categories. Firstly, the archives of local government and its predecessor bodies. Examples of these collections include the records of Kings County Grand Jury, the records of the Kings County Infirmary, the records of the Board of Guardians for the Poor Law Unions of Offaly, namely Tullamore, Parsonstown or Birr, and Edenderry, records of the Rural District Councils of Tullamore, Birr, Roscrea and Kilbeggan, records of Offaly County Council, and records of town councils, town commissions and urban district councils for Tullamore, Birr and Edenderry. These archival collections constitute the formal record of the administration of the county. It's not a full record, however, Kings County, Offaly, having suffered a double calamity in 1922 when both the Public Record Office in Dublin and the courthouse in Tullamore were burned within weeks of each other during the Civil War conflict. What remains locally dates from the mid-19th century and is what has been salvaged and therefore incomplete. Both Offaly County Library and Offaly History, through donation and sometimes purchase, have acquired privately held local archival material over many years. Archives in this category derive from the residue of landed estates, local businesses and organisations, and solicitors' offices. They can be comprised of personal and family papers, literary papers, rare local publications, school records, maps, plans, drawings, and photographs. A real treasure trove for anyone researching the history of County Offaly. To examine these collections in more detail, have a look at the Offaly Archives catalogue, which, under the stewardship of Lisa Shorthall, the archivist at Offaly Archives, is ever expanding. At a glance, the catalogue lists some gems for local researchers, including, for example, the Digby Estate records, many of which have been digitised, the Burr Poor Law Union records, the business records of the Moore family of Edenderry, and so much more. The themes are endless and are adding by the week. For example, you will see evidence of records of the early years of the GAA in Offaly, the papers of Woodfield House of Clara, photographs of the Mullock family of Ballycumber, Charleville Estate papers, and the voluminous Loughlin House papers from Moneygall. Indeed, we are extremely lucky to have such a resource available in Offaly, and as researchers and those with an interest in Offaly's history, we are grateful to Offaly County Library and to the Offaly Historical Society for this remarkable service, and we look forward to it ever expanding. Thank you for listening, and I wish you well with your research journey.